Chapter 1. In the Beginning. Think of a big, beautiful, empty land with mountains, forests, lakes, animals, and fish, but no people. This was America 16,000 years ago. Around that time, the first people probably arrived in Alaska from Asia. They traveled south and became the Native Americans of North America and the Maya, Aztecs, Inca, and other peoples of Central and South America. The Inuit, Eskimos, came to Canada and the Arctic the same way. But there are only a few of these peoples in America today. In the 16th century, Europeans started to come to America, and soon after that, they brought slaves from Africa to work for them. Large numbers of immigrants continued to arrive from all over the world until the middle of the 20th century. The empty land was now full of people, speaking different languages and with different ideas. There are just 3 countries now in North America: Canada, Mexico, and the USA. But there were nearly several more. And the 300 million people who live in the 50 states of the United States are not all the same. About 67% are white, 13% Hispanic, Spanish-speaking, 13% black, 4% Asian, and just 1% Native American. Most of them speak English, but it is not the same English as people speak in Britain, and many Americans speak Spanish as their first language. So, how was the USA born? How did it grow? What kind of country is it now? This book will try to answer those questions and many more. Chapter 2. The Pilgrim Fathers. The name America comes from an Italian businessman called Amerigo Vespucci, who sailed to South America between 1499 and 1502. But he was not the first European to make the dangerous journey across the Atlantic. The Vikings came to Vinland, probably Canada or New England, from Scandinavia around AD 1000. But they did not stay. Then, in 1492, a brave Italian sailor called Christopher Columbus reached the Caribbean while he was looking for a sea route from Europe to India. Columbus called the Native Americans Indians because he thought that he had reached India. When Columbus returned to Europe, he told people about his adventures, and other sailors, like Cabot and Cartier, followed him across the Atlantic. Europeans came to fish the rich seas of America, too. But it was only in the 17th century that the French, the Dutch, and the British all came to live in North America. The French in Quebec, the Dutch in New York, and the British in Virginia and New England. 2 very different groups of English people crossed the Atlantic. The first group began the colony of Jamestown in Virginia in 1607. They hoped to find gold there, but life was very hard for them. There was very little food, and many of them died during the first winter. Then Pocahontas, the daughter of a Native American chief, became a friend of Captain John Smith and helped him and the other English people. She later married a man called John Rolfe and went to England with him. Luckily, tobacco saved the young colony. It was easy to grow tobacco in Virginia, and smoking was becoming very fashionable. People in the colony stopped looking for gold and began to grow tobacco, which they sold in Europe. Soon, they started to bring people from Africa to work as their slaves and help them to grow more and more. John Smith traveled north in 1614 to the part of America that he called New England. When he returned to London, he told people that it was a good place to live. In 1620, another group of 101 English men, women, and children arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts. These people are called the Pilgrims, or Pilgrim Fathers, and they had very strong ideas about religion. They did not want to live in England because they did not agree with the English Church. So they sailed to America in a ship called the Mayflower. They farmed the land, and they bought and sold animal skins. They thought that all people were equal, and so they did not have slaves. The Pilgrims, too, were often ill and hungry, and nearly half of them died in the first year. But they had help from some of the Native Americans, particularly a man called Squanto. He went to Europe as a prisoner in 1605 and spent some years in England, so he spoke some English. He showed the Pilgrims how to hunt and grow corn. In the autumn of 1621, the Pilgrims had a big dinner to give thanks for the first food that they had grown themselves. This day was called Thanksgiving, and Americans still celebrate it every year on the fourth Thursday of November. It is one of the most important holidays in the year, and people often travel many hundreds of kilometers to be with their families. They eat a big dinner with two of the foods that the Pilgrim Fathers found in America: turkey and pie filled with pumpkin.